Hey, okay, welcome, Naked Agility. My name is Professional Scrum Trainer, Scotland. Naked Agility is available for DevOps and Agile training and consulting. Contact us for a free consultation. Oh, so I am wanting to have a little chat about a few things. This is my office hours. Um, Office hours is where I answer any questions that I had over the last hours. Is going to be moving from Tuesdays to Wednesdays as of next week, but you can effectively ask me anything. I have a link here to go to a form where you can ask anything anonymous. This is somewhere where nobody knows who you are and what you said, so don't put anything in the content that you read out. But I have a few questions that have come up over the last couple of weeks. I just finished a professional Scrum Master class for program Utvikling in Norway, a regular class that I and let's check for questions. We are going to talk about story point evolution. I had a conversation on Twitter with somebody, asked whether what I thought of story points. I was replying to Daniel Vacanti's thinks that story points have damaged our industry over the last 20 years, has put it back that amount. But I replied and said, I agree with Daniel. I used to think that story points were awesome, but now I don't. So we'll chat about that. I talk about team size because I think the traditional 6 plus or minus 3 is, as we get more complex at building software. And I had a question in my class around how to sell emergent architecture stakeholders. So if you do want to ask a question and you are on either LinkedIn, Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, please feel free to ask the question in the comments. I should be able to, as they come in, might be a delay, but I should be able to see them as they come in platforms. You can also go and ask questions at form, and I will ask. So I have just a quick update on the classes that we will be running. The Oslo class has just finished. I only have one more class on my schedule. I'm going to update my schedule, select what more at. But I have a professional Scrum Kanban coach, Daniel Vacanti. Time zone. Currently have a couple of students registered. We're hoping to have a lot of fun in that class as we use some new techniques to deliver a live virtual classroom and to create an experience. Daniel and I around data analytics flow better and bring that in for this world. So let me see. Let's go. First up is story point evolution. Story points they've had an interesting life, been around for quite a long time, and I think I agree with Daniel. Daniel Vacanti said that they've damaged our. Let me see if I can find that tweet. On Daniel. There we go. That's what I was. At. This. Oh, I make me small. So the reason that I don't like story points is that they don't actually provide value. I'm sure Daniel would do a much better job of describing the additional value that you get using different measures. But story points are something that we've been trying to use in the Agile community for a long time because their relative estimation. They don't have a value outside of the team because they're reflective of how the team effort that's involved. They are not something that we can compare across teams because each team come up with different values. They are not something that we can measure that team by, but they are traditionally used by the development team to understand, based on their history of story point delivery, velocity, based on that, how many things they might be able to bring into their sprint, and also at the product owner looking at what's the progression that they're expecting through the backlog. Problem with story points is that their standard deviation of what you think you're going to get, what you get, and maybe that worst case to best case, that standard deviation is so wide, more than 30%. That standard deviation is so wide that the ability to predict so low. 30% sprint on sprint, a huge difference getting stuff and not getting stuff. So what can we do instead? Well, as part of the PSK class, you can go download and read the Kanban guide for Scrum team. We talk instead about throughput. Throughput doesn't care about size, whereas velocity at story points cares about the size of the item. So you're going to sum up the story points backlog, or in the sprint backlog that have been delivered. Throughput only cares about the number of items per unit of time. So that unit of time could be sprint, just sum how many things did I deliver. One of the advantages of that is if the team want to game that, i.e. they want to make the numbers bigger to look better, they need to reduce the size of the items. And the size of the items is going to get smaller batches, and batches are going to process a lot more quickly. But it also allows us to look Instead, if we collect throughput, so we calculate, sorry, we know our throughput, we know our cycle time, so from when we decided the work has started to when we decide it ends. Collect our working process, so how many items do we currently have between lines of when we decided work started and when it finished, no matter how many columns. And an idea of how long things have in that line, or those two. Even you can have it in columns as well, you can break it out that way, but really, if we can model that, we can use Little's law, get an understanding of if we reduce our work in process, we could potentially increase our cycle time. And if we want to deliver more things, we need batches smaller. We can't tell any of that just from story points because they're not just size dependent, but an objective measure rather than a subjective measure. So I started off liking story points. I then moved towards thinking story points make sense for immature teams because they're easy to understand, easy to pick up quickly and get started with. But the limitations of story points, I think, cause more damage period of time, and I would rather a team started as possible, looking at their throughput, collecting their cycle time, and work item aging and work in process. If they start that sooner rather than later, they get used to it a lot more quickly. They're able to look at the data and maybe make better optimizations, make better decisions from events as they go. So that was my thought process, my journey towards that story points are a bad idea. I'm maybe not as against them as Daniel is, but I definitely think they're a thing of the past. Plastic forward. So the second one, second question was around team size, and we talk a lot in Scrum about team size, and we have particular questions in the particular questions in the Scrum training around, can a team be smaller than 3? Yes, it can. The Scrum Guide recommends that team at 3 and 9, but it doesn't say they have to be. The other question is usually 9. Yeah, of course they can. Teams can be bigger than 9. Teams can be way bigger than 9. Is that going to be optimal? Are they going to be able to communicate and understand what everybody's working on and work together effectively? That might be a different question in that space. So what I would like to discuss is I work with a lot of teams. I've worked for a long time as a Microsoft MVP. Yes, used to be TFS, now is DevOps, and I've been working with those along with the other for a long time, and their teams are bigger really than that 9. They have teams 10 and 12, and the reason they have teams between 10 and 12 is because they're doing a lot more things inside of the sprint to ensure that they're able to goal of having high quality working software in production at the end. Something that they use is site reliability techniques. So they have engineers inside of the sprint, and I think if my understanding is correct, it might have changed since the last time that I spoke to, but they have 2 people per sprint allocated to deal with site reliability. In each team, there are 2 people dealing with that. So anytime they have an outage, they are the first responders to that outage. So they're not interrupting the team working on adding value to the product. They may have to bring in other people that are currently adding value, figure that out. But they're you're hopefully not going to have an outage. If there is an outage, they do a root cause analysis. They spend the time, they're dedicated to the job of spending that time to do a root cause analysis. Figure out all of the things that might need to change in order to make the product better. Some of them may be small things, some of them may be big architectural changes. Get those things onto the product backlog, and then as their day-to-day job, when they're not dealing with emergent, their job is to work through only those site reliability tasks that making your application more stable, efficient, less buggy, better architecture, prevent outages in production. That role, site reliability engineering, is rotated through the team so that you don't have somebody just full-time as a specialist in that role. We need to rotate it around the takes production. Now, they also give responsibility to their team. Production, obviously, they've got SREs in. So teams that build a feature are responsible for deploying a feature and managing and maintaining it in production. So they have to decide what telemetry they're going to capture. They have to look at that telemetry. Everything's good. Partly the responsibility that those SREs. But it does leave the rest of the team free to focus adding value and be interrupted less. That means that the team needs to be that little bit bigger, bigger than you would from team 12. But maybe 10 to 12 is an extra person still than the 9 we generally look at. And the reason that they have that extra person is they're doing more stuff during sprint. In a traditional product cycle, especially the old TFS product cycle from ago, they would have shipped to production once every 2 years and had a service pack halfway. So every year they have a service pack, then a service pack. In that model, a lot of work got left to the end cycle. You'd have a code freeze, and then you have to go and stabilize the code, and that's all that, paying back technical debt, fixing bugs, that kind of thing. But there's also work to secure the product, to run security checks, to run performance benchmarks, do all of that work. And now, in modern techniques that they're using, they run all of those things inside of the team. So they're not running them in a secondary stage outside of the team by a different department that gives them feedback. Development team themselves, making sure that they've got good security, that they've got automation around the security that they know done, and the rest of the team can read exercises to get the additional stuff that they might. So their teams are a little bit bigger, and I think that is an indication of things to come for many teams. That maybe the traditional thing that people talk about of 5 to 6 Scrum team not going to be enough as we bring, and not only have we got coders and testers on, also bringing in security experts and operations and production support metrics, as we're bringing those things that are professional, really understand quality of the work that they're doing and the impact that they have on production and what good bad looks like, i.e. the telemetry to know whether broken something or whether they've performance or whether they're actually using the feature. create. They're all things added to maybe smaller team bigger, and I don't think I want to see bigger than 12. That for me is quite a big team, but I think it's within the context of the organization. Some organizations will be all of those things we're talking about and still have small teams. Other organizations will have to add. So that was the second one. We talked about story points, moving towards the more flow style metrics. Talked about team. So the other one that I had was around emergent architecture. I think I'm going to be interested if I can have a decent answer for this one. So the question was around, how do you sell emergent architecture to stakeholders? That idea that we're not going to know up front. It's not possible for us to know up front. And there may be things that we would have added to architecture in a waterfall or Tayloristic project management model where we would have made a bunch of decisions or features that we actually build. That would be a lot of waste. We want to have our architecture emerge over time. Maybe in the first sprint we spend 50 time adding value. The rest of the time we're working with architecture. Time value we can add gets bigger, and the amount trying to do is not have debt take up that slack. Large amounts of new functions. But selling emergent architecture to stakeholders, the organization, I think this is something that's just a change in the way organizations organized in order to facilitate agile business practices. I'm not talking about just agile within software engineering team, rest of the organization, in order to take advantage of that speed software team. And really, that, I mean, let's go back a bit, because that's not the point. The whole point is that a business needs to be able to take advantage of opportunity as they arise in the market. To be able to see an opportunity, go, let's build something around that, take advantage of that. Whether that's getting a new product into the market, whether that's adding new features into the market, whatever that is. If you look at the current COVID crisis and the number of the shift that organizations have made in the features they're delivering them, especially in the space of virtual line. So all the video conferencing applications ramp up not only their infrastructure, but potentially certain features. Microsoft have already started rolling out 3x3 instead of 2x2 windows. They've already started rolling out hand raise as an intrinsic part of the product, and other things. End call was one of them. The Zoom had to pivot away from adding new features towards adding security and actually adding the encryption said was in the product, actually doing things. Very different model than they had before the crisis happened. And even things like I use a platform called Board Game in order to play games remotely. And 4 months ago, they were lucky if they hit 5,000 users given accessing their system. Now they're having 5,000. They're having to ramp up both performance, scale their servers, scale their instances like everybody else. So these pivots of both what features we're going to build, when we're going to release them, as well as scaling up, are things that organizations that have been able to pivot, like that word, but change what they're doing to reprioritize work. The organizations that have been able to do that more quickly are the ones that have been able to take advantage of this opportunity for them to their market share, to visibility across the board. So it's important that we are able to sell the ideas behind architecture, the idea that we gain our ability to change for a longer period of time. And I don't know that I did a good job of covering that, but you will probably let me know in the comments. I don't see any comments coming in, so let me just check my list of things. I did have a conversation with a couple of folks after the class around how do you get executive buy-in? How do you get people got a executive and leadership who are not yet on the process? The ideas, the ability of changing the way we work, not just at the level but throughout the organization, to ditch the idea of the hierarchies, departmental model, move towards holistic delivery, much shallower hierarchies. That's I didn't have a good answer to that. How do we change? I mostly work with organizations who have already decided to change. Bring me in to help them with training, help them coach, and they're already on that path when I have the first conversation with them. Yeah, I didn't have an answer for that. If you have an answer for that, please let me know. We could get you on that topic. So if you're interested in talking about executive buy-in, well, I think that's all of the content that I had just now. I don't see any questions coming in. Let me just check the no, there's only 2 responses, so please ask questions. I have a link to ask questions anonymously. You can also put them in the chat below here, and I will happily answer them. So if you, it would be really helpful for me if you would subscribe to YouTube, wherever the subscription button is, and hopefully I will either see you in a class soon, hopefully in the Caroline class or so, or in another class that we schedule. Oh, and if you're in Atlanta, I am I'm helping facilitate a professional Scrum product owner with Russell Miller, Atlanta. Find it on the scrum.org website. A pretty awesome class, so I'd encourage you to sign up for that if you're anywhere. Okay, thank you very much. Naked Agility is available for DevOps and Agile training and consulting. Contact us for a free consultation.